Hey everyone. So you want to learn how to finally get over this whole perfectionism thing and just start creating already?
Yeah, it's funny
I
because
want to dive deep today into that.
it really is.
Really break it down. Like, why is it such a creativity killer?
Yeah.
We've got some awesome sources for you guys today.
Absolutely.
Elaine de Botton,
Yep.
Marcus Aurelius, Barry Schwartz, and James Clear.
Good lineup.
Yeah, and we're even going to look at some examples like, those big creators like Mr. Beast and Ali Abdaal,
Uh-huh.
who
Yeah.
guess what? They didn't start out perfect.
No.
But they still managed to build this incredible success.
Totally.
So get ready to just ditch those crazy expectations and just
Yeah.
embrace the power of action.
Love it.
Okay, so let's get real for a sec. Why does this whole perfectionism thing trip us up so badly? It's
Yeah.
like this mental block
Right.
stopping us before we even begin. What's the psychology behind that?
So, it's interesting how we often kind of mistake perfectionism for a strength.
Right.
We think it's about striving for excellence, but the truth is it can really be this sneaky form of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
One key factor at play here is something that Barry Schwartz calls paralysis by analysis
Okay.
in his book, The Paradox of Choice. And the idea is that, too many options
Right.
or those really sky high expectations we set for ourselves kind of create this overwhelming fear
Yeah.
of making the wrong choice.
Oh, for sure.
So we get stuck in this loop of overthinking
Totally.
and we're unable to move forward because, the perceived risk feels too high.
Oh, yeah, I've totally been there, frozen by the fear of making the,
Right.
wrong decision. It's
Yeah.
we're conditioned to think that there's one right way to do things,
Right.
and anything less is a failure.
Totally. And this fear of imperfection, I think, stems a lot from unrealistic expectations. And Alain de Botton explores that, in The Constellations of Philosophy. He's basically saying even the most, brilliant minds throughout history
Right.
had flaws and made mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if, Da Vinci just, threw in the towel on the Mona Lisa
Right.
because her smile wasn't perfect enough.
Yeah.
Or, Einstein gave up on his theories because they weren't immediately, embraced by everyone.
Right.
It's kind of absurd, right?
It's true.
Perfection is an illusion.
Yeah.
And striving for it often leaves us feeling just inadequate and ultimately defeated before we even begin.
It makes you wonder, where do we even get these crazy expectations from?
Right.
I mean, nobody's born thinking, their first scribble should be worthy of the Louvre.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there,
Yeah.
Societal pressures, early experiences, maybe even certain personality types.
Uh-huh.
All of these can contribute to perfectionistic tendencies.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the influence of our modern,
Yeah.
hyper-connected world.
Social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to, those perfectly filtered snapshots of success.
Oh, my God.
Forgetting that they rarely reflect the
The reality.
the messy, iterative reality behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Remember those early YouTube videos from Mr. Beast or Ali Abdaal?
Yeah.
They weren't masterpieces right off the bat, but they
God.
kept creating, learning, improving with each video.
Yeah.
Their early work paved the way for their success,
Totally.
imperfections and all.
It's so true. Seeing those
Yeah.
early, less polished creations
Uh-huh.
from people who are now wildly successful
Uh-huh.
makes you realize that it's more about the journey
Right.
than reaching some mythical endpoint of perfection.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah. And that's where the power of action comes in.
Okay.
Instead of getting bogged down but aiming for this unattainable ideal of perfection,
Right.
what if we shifted our focus to simply taking action, even if it's imperfect,
Yeah.
even if it's messy?
Okay. I'm feeling pumped up already.
Good.
But tell me honestly, how do we break free from this perfectionism trap when it feels so deeply ingrained?
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
It's like a default setting in my brain,
Right, right.
you know?
Well, one strategy that's really popular in the entrepreneurial world
Yeah.
is the 70% rule.
Okay, I've heard of this.
Yeah. The idea is that if something is about 70% ready,
Okay.
it's good enough to launch.
Oh.
You get it out there, get feedback, and refine it as you go.
So instead of waiting for it to be perfectly polished, we just hit publish.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little rough around the edges?
Yeah.
Oh, that feels scary.
It does, right.
Yeah.
It's a mindset shift, but
Yeah.
a powerful one because done
Right.
is always better than perfect.
Okay.
especially when it comes to like creative endeavors.
Right.
Think about launching a website, writing a blog post,
Yeah.
even sending out that email you've been agonizing over for weeks. Done means you're moving forward, gathering momentum, and actually learning from the process.
Yeah.
Perfect often means just staying stuck.
But what about the fear of judgment?
Yeah.
It can feel terrifying to put your work out there when you know it's not flawless.
Of course.
So
Totally. That fear is completely understandable.
Yeah.
We all want to be seen as competent and capable.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
We often dramatically overestimate how much others notice.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our imperfections, there's this psychological phenomenon known as the spotlight effect.
Okay.
And it basically means that we tend to think we're under this giant spotlight
Oh, yeah.
being scrutinized by everyone,
Right.
when in reality, most people are barely paying attention.
Ah.
They're too busy worrying about their own spotlights.
Wow. That's actually really reassuring.
Yeah,
It's like, chill out. Nobody's analyzing your every move as much as you think they are.
exactly.
But even knowing that it's still hard to completely silence that inner critic, you know?
Yeah,
So how do we deal with that voice that keeps telling us we're not good enough?
I think that's where the wisdom of the Stoics can be incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Marcus Aurelius,
Uh.
a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher,
Right.
wrote this really great quote.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are."
Okay.
And I think it's this really powerful reminder that we can't control external judgments,
Right.
but we can control our effort, our actions, and our attitude.
Okay.
So instead of getting like bogged down by anxieties about what others might think,
Yeah.
we focus on just doing the best we can with
Right.
what we have
Right.
here, right now.
So instead of chasing this elusive idea of perfection, which is often driven by external validation,
Right.
we should be focusing on taking action, even if it's imperfect,
Yes.
and letting go of the need to control other people's perceptions.
Exactly. And you know what? The
Yeah.
more you act,
Yeah.
the more confident you become. And the more confident you become,
Uh-huh.
the less power perfectionism has over you.
Interesting.
It's a beautiful cycle. Instead of letting fear hold you back,
Right.
you actually use action as a way to like build confidence
On-
and break free from those self-imposed limitations.
All right. I am officially ready to ditch the perfectionism
Yes.
and embrace the power of action.
Love it.
But before we go full steam ahead,
Uh-huh.
let's dive into some practical strategies for actually making this shift.
Okay.
I am all ears for how to turn these insights into real-world action.
All right. Let's do it.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful tools I think you have in your arsenal is this idea of systems over goals.
Okay.
It's from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Uh,
And it's really about shifting our focus
okay.
from achieving some grand, often overwhelming outcome
Right.
to like building consistent habits and processes
Right.
that support our creative journey.
So instead of fixating on writing the perfect novel,
Right.
I should be focusing on building a daily writing habit.
Yes. Even if it's just for 15 minutes.
Exactly. Those small, consistent actions done over time
Okay.
are what lead to real mastery.
Right.
Like building a muscle.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't expect to bench press 200 pounds on your first try,
Sure.
right? You start small,
Right.
gradually increase the weight and reps as you get stronger.
Makes sense.
It's the same with creative work.
Okay, that makes total sense. It takes the pressure off of like
Right.
having to achieve some massive goal right away.
Exactly.
And allows you to just like focus on the joy of the process itself.
Yes.
But let's be honest, even if we manage to silence that inner critic
Yeah.
and embrace the 70% rule,
Right.
there's still that lingering fear
Uh-huh.
of putting our work out into the world and
Yeah.
having it like flop, and people just don't get it.
The dreaded fear of failure.
Right.
Something every creator grapples with, I think, at some point.
For sure.
But what if we kind of reframed our definition of failure?
What if instead of seeing it as this reflection of our worth,
Yeah.
we saw it as valuable data?
Interesting.
Every flop,
Yeah.
every piece of like negative feedback is an opportunity to learn, adjust, and improve.
So instead of letting those perceived flops just like crush our confidence,
Right.
we can actually use them as fuel for growth.
Exactly. And remember the spotlight effect we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Chances are people aren't scrutinizing your work as harshly as you think they are.
Right.
They're probably too busy worrying about their own stuff.
Yeah. True. True.
And even if someone does offer like constructive criticism,
Uh,
it doesn't mean that your work is inherently bad.
Right.
It just means they have a different perspective, which
Right.
can actually be incredibly valuable.
I'm starting to realize that a lot of this comes down to like mindset.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from a fear-based approach,
Right.
where we're constantly worried about messing up or being judged,
Right.
to a growth-oriented approach,
Yeah.
where we can embrace challenges and see setbacks as opportunities for learning.
I think you're spot on. It's about cultivating
Okay.
that inner resilience, that belief in your ability to adapt, learn, and keep growing, even when things don't go as planned.
It's like building that unshakable confidence from the inside out.
Yes.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to talk about mindset shifts.
Yeah.
But like, how to make them stick?
Action, my friend. Action is the key.
Okay.
Every time you push past your fear and create something,
Yeah.
every time you share your work,
Mm-hmm.
every time you embrace feedback and use it to improve,
Okay.
you're strengthening that inner muscle
Okay.
of self-belief.
Yeah.
It's a positive feedback loop.
So it's not about waiting for permission or approval
Right.
from the outside world.
Right.
It's about giving ourselves permission to create, to experiment, to mess up,
Yeah.
to learn, and to grow.
You got it.
Okay.
It's about owning your creative journey of imperfections and all. And you know what? The more you create,
Yeah.
the more you realize that the joy is in the process itself,
Right.
not in achieving some like elusive endpoint of perfection.
Okay. I'm feeling inspired.
Good.
But for someone who's really struggling with perfectionism,
Yeah.
that first step can feel like a giant leap.
Right.
Where do they even begin?
Yeah.
Like, what's a tangible action they can take today
Okay.
to start breaking free?
I love that you're thinking about like concrete steps. Remember that just do it philosophy from the Bold Creator podcast?
Yeah.
It's about taking action,
Right.
even if it's imperfect,
Okay.
even if it feels scary.
Right.
And that action doesn't have to be monumental.
Okay.
Start small.
So what are we talking here? Like
Yeah.
writing a paragraph,
Yeah.
doodling an idea,
Yeah.
recording a quick voice memo.
Exactly. Think about one tiny step you can take today
Okay.
to move you closer to a creative goal that you've been putting off. Maybe it's sketching out a rough draft of that painting you've been envisioning.
Yeah.
Or writing the first paragraph of that blog post
Right.
you've been wanting to publish.
Right.
Or even just brainstorming a list of ideas for that new project you've been dreaming about.
Okay.
The important thing is to take action,
Okay.
even if it's imperfect, because action is what fuels momentum,
That's right.
builds confidence, and ultimately breaks the hold of perfectionism.
It's about proving to ourselves that we are capable of taking action and making things happen,
Yes.
even when that inner critic is screaming its doubts.
Exactly.
But what about that other fear that often lurks in the shadows?
Yeah.
The fear of what other people will think.
Right.
It's one thing to push past our own self-doubt,
Right.
but how do we deal with the potential judgment from the outside world?
I think that fear of judgment is like deeply rooted in our social wiring, you know?
Right.
We're wired to care about what others think. It's like a survival mechanism.
Right.
Ingrained over millennia.
Yeah.
But in the context of creative expression, this instinct can become like a major roadblock.
So how do we break free from that need for external validation? It's easier said than done to just ignore what other people think.
You're right. It's not about becoming completely indifferent to feedback.
Yeah.
It's more about shifting our primary source of validation
Okay.
from external to internal.
Gotcha.
Remember what we discussed about Stoicism?
Uh-huh.
We can't control what others think,
Right.
but we can control, you know, our effort, our actions, our commitment to our craft.
So it's about finding that sense of self-worth and satisfaction
Yes.
from the act of creating itself,
Yes.
rather than seeking approval from the outside world?
Precisely. And that shift in focus can be incredibly liberating.
Okay.
When you're creating from a place of inner passion and purpose, the opinions of others hold less power over you.
But what about when those opinions come in the form of like harsh criticism?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, don't let it get to you,
Yeah.
but it can be really tough to brush off, especially when it feels personal.
Absolutely. Criticism, even when it's well-intentioned, can sting.
Yeah.
But here's a reframing that might help.
Okay.
What if we saw each critique as like a piece of data,
Cool.
a signal pointing us towards areas for growth and improvement?
Okay.
It's not about taking every comment to heart or letting it dictate our creative choices.
Right.
It's about, you know, filtering out the noise, identifying the nuggets of truth,
Okay.
and using them to refine our craft.
That's a helpful way to look at it. It takes the sting out of those like harsh comments and turns them into opportunities for learning.
Exact. And remember,
Yeah.
you get to choose which feedback to take on board
Right.
and which to let go of.
Right.
You are the captain of your creative ship.
So the next time I'm tempted to spiral into self-doubt after receiving a negative comment, I should ask myself,
Yeah.
what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And does this align with my own creative vision?
Exactly. And trust me, the more you create, the more resilient you become to criticism. It's like building up an immunity to those negative voices.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into
Yeah.
the psychology of perfectionism.
Totally.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on how to break free from its grip
Yeah.
and embrace the messy, imperfect, but ultimately rewarding journey of creative expression.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
Yeah.
There's a whole community of creators out there who are also navigating these challenges
Right.
and celebrating the triumphs of imperfect action.
And on that note, I want to challenge you, our listener,
Yes.
to take one small, imperfect action today towards a creative goal you've been putting off.
Yes, love it.
Don't let perfectionism hold you back any longer.
Yeah.
Write that first paragraph sketch,
Yeah.
that rough draft record, that first take.
Just do it.
Remember, progress over perfection.
Yes.
And who knows, maybe your imperfect action today will spark the creation of something truly extraordinary.
You got to keep creating, keep believing in yourself. We're cheering you on every step of the way.
That's it for today's deep dive.
Awesome.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep creating.